Very, very good. Excited.
Can
Excited to learn more.
you hear and see me okay?
Yeah, I'm seeing you really well. So, welcome to the Passive Listening. Today we have with us Buck Brannaman. Is one of the, I don't know if the first people, but one of the people that brought a different way of listening to horses and communicating with them. So, welcome back.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, and we will go from there with further questions.
Well, as a young guy, I was a trick roper. Me and my brother performed in rodeos, and I started doing rope tricks at 3 years old and started doing it professionally at 6. And we did some Kellogg's commercials and things when we were little. And that was kind of the beginning. And then eventually we were taken away from my father because he'd become real abusive after my mom died. And I went into a foster home, and my foster parents had a small ranch in Montana. They were very poor, but they sort of took in lost kids, and anybody that didn't want their kids anymore, they would just take them to the Shirley Ranch and dump them off, and that's what happened to me. And my foster dad was a cowboy and loved horses. And he got me started riding young horses. At that point, my trick roping career was, of course, sidelined. And my foster dad was really the first man I ever really thought I wanted to be like, and he got me started riding young horses. But it was after I got out of high school that I went to work cowboying on a ranch that uh, they would send the cowboys to ride with Ray Hunt in his clinics. And that's really where I got my start uh, on the path toward where I am today and what I'm all the things that I'm teaching everybody else all over the world. Really, Ray Hunt was responsible for that. And Ray
Wow.
was my teacher for 40 years.
Do you think that start was part of your way of working differently with horses?
Oh, I think maybe because of the dark childhood that I had. Um, I, when I was 9 or 10 years old, I knew what it was like to be afraid you were going to die. And and I think that maybe that gave me an empathy for horses that I may not have had otherwise if I'd have lived a little softer life. But I think sometimes it goes one way or the other. You can go through something really dark like I did and end up bitter and hateful and maybe even continue the same behavior toward your own kids. Or maybe you go the opposite way and you have an empathy. And so I think because of what I'd been through when I saw Ray Hunt, what he was capable of doing and how kind he was to horses, the way he did things, that really fit me. And I knew right away that that's what I would be pursuing the rest of my life, the way he worked with horses.
So you're saying you have a way to recognize what it's light and what it's darkness, and then the ability to see something that is light and to decide to to aim for that direction.
Yeah.
If I'm trying to recap uh,
Yeah.
everything regard to that. And you can see, you remember that as a decision, like that's what I'm gonna be, or I'm not gonna be like that.
Well, probably a little bit of both. Like I say, I've learned a lot about parenting because I figured my basic model when I became a parent was, well, a good way to start is I'll do just everything the opposite that my dad did, and I probably have a good foundation. And but then through working with the horses and the philosophy of working with the horses in this way really molded how I've been with my kids and how I try to be with other people.
When you are thinking about, I think, philosophy with horses, it's an interesting combination. Like, what do you learn from horses into your life? How can you learn it?
Well, I know this that if you achieve the ability to get a horse to understand what you're looking for without being troubled, in other words, you've adjusted your approach to where it's fitting to the horse. That helps you through everything in life. When the horse is saying that he accepts you and he understands you and he's even drawn to you, uh, that affects positively every single thing in your life. So it's just made my life so rich. I often say that anything good that ever happened to me in my life, number one, of course, I'm grateful to God, but number two, the horse. I owe everything that's been good in my life to the horse. And the words that Ray Hunt would use is he would say, I'm trying to get the horse to do as much as he can for me without being troubled to do it. So, and that was his basic philosophy with everything. Now, these days, me and my wife were just talking about it this morning. A lot of folks, they can sure talk this philosophy. The internet's just covered up with people that just hearing them speak philosophically about it, you think, damn, that guy or that gal must be handy as hell. And then you get to know them and you realize it's just talk. There's a lot of wannabe philosophers out there, but I think you have to be able to go out and prove it too, or it's just talk.
I'm curious about because of the talking of the wannabe philosopher, where is the gap between just thinking about something and then the ability to live it or to prove it, or what uh, what allow you to implement those philosophies through a
Well,
way of life? And you spoke a little bit about God maybe, and then the horses, but
well, from the time you know how a lot of times when you're a young fella, people are always asking you, what are you going to do when you grow up? What are you going to be? And we had a sort of an adopted aunt and uncle showed up for my brother's high school graduation, and we were at my foster parents' place. And of course, that's what they always ask the graduating senior, what are you going to do with your life? And then my uncle, which he wasn't really my uncle, but you know how that goes.
yeah.
Uh, he asked me, he said, what are you going to do with your life? And I said, well, I have two options. I already have it figured out. I'm already one of the best trick ropers in America, and I want to be a horseman. So I'm going to pursue both, and whatever seems to be the path that works out the best for me, I'll leave the other behind. But my passion is I want to be a horseman. And he patted me on the head and he said, that's all right, boy. One day you'll grow up and start thinking like an adult. Well, yeah, well, he died a drunk, and I did just what I said I was going to do. But I did learn something even from him because I was kind of bitter the way he treated my what I had said. And And I learned from that because I thought, you know what? Be careful what you say to little kids because they'll grow up and they'll remember what you said. Be kind and respectful to little kids when you're talking to them and don't talk down to them because I never forgot that. And from that point on, I never had much to do with him. We never had words or anything. It was just like, well, you're dead to me. You're not on my side. You don't have my back. So I always knew what I wanted to be. And it's funny, after going through a few years of very dark, scary stuff, which I won't get into, uh, it's almost like when it all turned around, this ranch started sending me to Ray Hunt clinics all the time. I rode with Ray all the time. And in my opinion, he's the greatest horseman in the last 500 years. It's almost, I've thought about it and laughed to myself because I always figured that God must have a pretty good sense of humor, or he wouldn't have given us a sense of humor, right? And it's almost like there was a point where there were so damn many dark things happened to me that maybe God just thought, well, you know what? Maybe it's about time we throw the little bastard a bone, and we'll see what he does with it. And uh, and from that point on, my life has been so blessed, so good that I almost feel guilty, because I've been able to spend my whole life riding horses. That's it. That's all I've had to do is ride horses, and it's all I really wanted to do.
What is the
And it's all I really wanted to do.
what is the you spoke about horses and you spoke about God. There is a relationship between that, like
Well, I think Ray and Tom Dorrance was Ray Hunt's teacher. They talked about feel, timing, and balance. And Tom always said there's one other thing. And he said, I don't know what it is. And then toward the end of Tom's life, he was 94 when I talked to him last. He said, I think that other thing is the spiritual connection between the horse and the human. He said, I think that's what that is. But he said, don't just assume that everyone gets that. A lot of people become uh, mechanically sound in how they ride. They understand mechanics. They understand what they'd like a horse to do, and maybe even a little bit of how the horse thinks. But there's a point in time if you're treating horsemanship like it is an art rather than just an activity, something to do, then you transcend just being mechanical with horses, that you start chasing feel. You start trying to see how little you can do and still get him to respond. How subtle can you make it and have him understand you? Yet I'm no different than anybody else. I want a horse to perform. I want him to lope and stop and turn around, change leads and catch a calf and do whatever I need him to do. But nobody ever said that the horse was required to do this and not necessarily enjoy his work. My horses enjoy the dance. And my whole life with horses is a dance.
very unique perspective, like where you are coming to it. So you are saying a dance and you are saying there was a different connection. I'm curious if you use those horses in a way to become a better version of yourself or a better
Oh,
connection with
yeah. Oh,
God
yeah.
and how does it happen from your example, even from people that you did clinic and what changed in them during that?
Well, I think you have to stay curious. Someone asked me a while back, I was sitting on a pretty nice horse that I'd ridden quite a bit. And she said, what's the best bridle horse you ever made? I said, well, the one I'm sitting on today. And I said, Give me a year or two or a few months even, and this is going to be the second best bridle horse I ever made. Every horse I make is a better version of what I was trying to do on the last horse. So I'm not resting on my laurels. I'm still trying to get better. When I'm home in the wintertime off the road, I study every day. I try to find ways for me to improve where I can help the horse to understand. I work on myself, my timing, my feel, my awareness. Uh, I'm constantly working on myself so that maybe I have more to offer people that go to my clinics.
Wow. And did you have experience? I'm sure you have, but like stories about people and how they change stuff in their
Well,
life
oh,
from
there's a million stories, but I would say probably the most important part of what I do for a living is that through the horse, through the horse, sometimes someone will come to me and I'd say, oh, a few times a month, not every single day, but a few times a month, someone will come to me and say, through what I've learned from you and through the horse, you have changed my life for the better for the rest of my life. I'm going to be better at everything because of what I've learned through the horse and you. You've affected my life in a way I can't even begin to tell you. That that means so much more to me than if they could figure out how to get their horse how to turn around, or get their horse to stop. That's the real big picture. And for some people that go to the clinics, it might not be as life-changing to them, but they get along better, they learn, their horse enjoys them more and they're more comfortable, maybe less scared, less afraid, whatever it would happen to be that they're dealing with. Um, they're all going to leave more or less satisfied, but sometimes there's something really important happens with people that affects the rest of their life in a positive way. And it's humbling to get to be that person myself that gets to be a part of their life.
what is common around those people? Because as a therapist, sometimes I can see people describing the experience that you are saying. And I'm curious if there is something that is common between the people that,
I think maybe the honesty of the horse, because I've told people before in the clinics, pay attention to how your horse feels about you. Because if the way your horse operates, the horse is basically telling you you're a son of a bitch, you are. And yet if the horse tells you you're all right, that he enjoys you and that he's compelled to be with you, you don't need me to tell you you're all right. You can believe it if the horse accepts you. And that's something that just the honesty of the relationship between the horse and the human, they might not want to hear those words from another person, but they know the horse doesn't lie. So they can take that. The horse doesn't have an axe to grind. So the horse can be uh, a real test of where you are as a person, your development as a person. And believe me, everybody goes through that. There's no doubt. But uh, at this stage in my life, I've had enough experience with horses. I can say that I am totally at peace.
so horses as a teacher for peace and as a measurement device or tool to help us get closer to what true.
It can be, not necessarily always, because some people are not open to that. But it sure there is a lot of things through working with the horses and changing yourself to where you're more fitting to the horse that changes every person you come in contact with, every situation you deal with. So I wouldn't be the person I am without the horse, having been through all the stuff that I was through as a little kid. Um, there was a good period of time when I first started really working with horses that the horse was there for me. I needed the horse. I saw the horse as really maybe maybe the only friend I had in the world. And now, all these years later, I have the opportunity to give back to the horse. For example, a lady, I was in Santa Cruz, California here a couple of years ago, and a lady said to me, this is the first day of the clinic, and she said, Buck, you're a big player in the horse business. Everybody knows you. I want to know why you're not more involved with horse rescue, why you're not doing your part. And that kind of touched me off a little bit. And I said, let me tell you something, lady. There's a lot of horses go to the slaughterhouse that are really well-bred horses, that are nice horses that any person would be proud to own because the human fails with them. The human gets the horse in trouble. Then they blame the horse and he gets sold off at the auction yard. I said, they're not all just Mustangs or kind of homely horses. A lot of them are really beautifully bred horses that end up going to slaughter. And I said, so you might think you're changing the world because you might go to the auction barn and buy a horse or two, and then you take him home and you feed him and water him, and then he dies of old age on your place. I said, you haven't done anything. But I said, you see all these people here at the clinic? If I can affect them in the way that I'm hoping to, every horse that they come in contact with the rest of their life won't fail. Therefore, won't have to go to slaughter like a lot of these horses. So if I can affect the human, all the humans that are in my life, you think of how many thousands of horses' lives are saved because the human has found a way to work with them that fits the horse. So I said, don't tell me I don't rescue horses. And then she said, well, I never really thought about it like that. And I said, and you know what? There's probably a hell of a lot of other things you haven't thought about either.
And that's without the thinking about the human that they are in
Right.
touch with and everything that goes along
Right.
with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question in regard to your personal journey. Um, in the movie, you describe yourself as a child that was shy in a way,
Yeah.
and from that to become a clinician.
It's pretty crazy. I When I went to live with my foster parents, I was so particularly terrified of men that I didn't speak to anyone, even my brother who had been through the same stuff. I didn't speak to anyone for about 4 months. And it's not that I forgot how to talk or anything. I just realized if I don't speak to anybody, I don't draw any attention to myself, and therefore I can be safe. So, and I didn't and even say anything to my foster mother, who was like an angel, just a wonderful Christian ranch woman. She never hurt anybody in her entire life. Sweetest person I've ever known. And she never pushed it. She's like, if he doesn't want to talk, he doesn't have to talk. Just leave him alone. And I did my work. I did my chores like all the other boys. But I went for the longest time and didn't talk. And then finally I would talk a little bit to my foster mom. And then eventually I got to where I would, but I was so shy. If you'd have known me at say 12 or 14 years old, and if someone would have told you, Yeah, he's going to end up speaking professionally for a living his whole working life. You'd be like, you have lost your mind. There is no way. But after I'd cowboyed for a while, I started riding horses for the public after I got out of high school. And really, all I wanted to do was start colts. And in those days, I would tell people, you bring your horse, you drop him off, and you get in your truck and you leave, and you don't come back till your horse is ready to go home. I don't want to see you. I don't want to talk to you. And if you come uninvited when I'm riding horses here, um, bring your trailer because I'm going to make you take your horse home. I just wanted to be with the horses. That was it. And then finally, I got to be friends with some local people that I'd started colts for. And he kept asking me, he said, well, gosh, I wish you could just teach a handful of us. We're all friends. We all know each other. If you could just teach us what you're doing with these young horses so when we take them home, we could do better. And for a few years, I just said, go to a ray hunt clinic. That's where I learned it. Go learn it from ray hunt. Take your colt and go ride at the ray hunt. And he kind of kept after me. And finally I said, all right, I'll go down to this indoor arena that was close by. I said, I'll spend a couple hours with you guys. I didn't really call it a clinic, you know. And gosh, I was so nervous about that. And these are people that there's only half a dozen of them, and they were friends of mine. I enjoyed their company, but to have them all out there on their horses at the same time is a little different deal. And I was so upset and nervous about it. At the end of the day, I don't know if they learned much of anything. I pretty much repeated everything I'd heard from Ray Hunt for years because I didn't figure I had a hell of a lot to offer. But at the end of the day, I was so mad at myself that that was such a burden to me to have to do that. So I just committed right then. I said, all right, I'm going to do these little weekend classes until I become comfortable speaking to people in a group because I hate that about myself. I hate it so much. So I'm going to do it until I feel comfortable. And then I'm going to quit and I'm just going to go back to riding colts. So then I spent a summer doing that on Saturday afternoons, mostly with people that I knew. And I got better and better, more comfortable at it. And by the end of the summer, I kind of thought, you know, I'm not that bad at this. These people are actually improving, getting better. Maybe I should, maybe I should just keep on doing it for a while. And one thing led to another, and pretty soon I'm doing a clinic here and there. And I've never advertised ever since I've been doing this. I just figured, well, if I'm any good, word of mouth, people will talk about it, and someone else from another town will ask me to come do something. And I guess it took probably about 5 years of doing it. And then I was doing it full time. And I've been doing it full time ever since. But yeah, I would have never expected I'd end up speaking for a living, but it was sure it was sure a burden to me to have to do it at first, and now I enjoy it. I don't get nervous about it at all. But I've also done more than a couple thousand clinics. So
So it's building up that skills, but you're saying like 5 years it took to the point that it's
yeah, yeah. But I was committed to being able to get past that because I knew it was going to keep me from being successful in my life. And if I was that worried and uptight about, I mean, I was socially crippled, really.
is about born in Israel, and there is a lot of trauma right now around Israel
Sure.
for few years even. And I'm curious, how does horses impact trauma and healing trauma?
It's amazing. 100 years ago in this country, the West would have never been settled without the horse. They'd still be somewhere in Iowa. trying to find out how to get here. So the horse had a role in the human experience here in America. It's responsible for the United States being settled. Well, then there came a time with the automobile and airplanes and all that to where some pondered, well, maybe the horse isn't of use to us anymore. Maybe he'll just go away. But the horse seems to always reinvent himself in some way because it's remarkable how horses are used even in therapy for people that have been maybe wounded warriors, people that have PTSD, or maybe just that they have emotional problems that it just seems like the human can't get through to them, but the horse can. The
Wow.
relationship with the horse can be so healing and therapeutic. So it's like I figure the horse is always going to be here and always have a connection to the human being in some way.
Any thought about how they're doing that from
How do
your
they do
experience?
that?
Yep.
Well, there's something real spiritual about the horse in that if he connects with you, some people will say, yeah, well, it's kind of like working with dogs. No, it's not. A dog's a predator. And we've all known people that have dogs that they're even kind of about half mean to their dog, but the dog is just glued to them, just loyal to the end, even when they're not very damn nice to their dog. The horse is a little more choosy. The horse is a prey animal, so it's totally different. If that horse accepts you and welcomes you, um, that's a lot bigger deal. And for someone who is maybe dealing with some tough things emotionally, just that interaction with the horse is, I don't know where else they would get it. The feeling that they seem to get, it's remarkable. Even mentally handicapped kids, the way they turn around in the presence of a horse is just, I don't know, it's miraculous, really.
Uh, I think the question I want to ask, I'm not sure if there is easy answer to that, but how much you spoke about the figured out how horses think, body language, and the other element. Let's say someone want to develop that other element of spiritual connection with horses or connection with horses. What
Well,
do you think?
you learn through the experience, you learn a lot of things to do with horses that's going to work and make you successful. But you also learn a hell of a lot of things not to do from making mistakes where you're just like, oh, shit, I wish I hadn't done that. Um, to give you an idea where a lot of this information came from, Ray Hunt got this from Tom Dorrance, and Tom Dorrance got this from the horse. The horse was his teacher. Tom Dorrance was a genius, and he committed his entire life to trying to find a way to work with horses as if the horse got to make up the rules how you would get him to understand. And Tom and I were, this was later on in Tom's life. We were having lunch one day, and he said, hey, do you remember the day we met? I said, well, of course, Tom. He said, yeah, it was July 17th, 1979, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He said, you were a foster kid off a little ranch. And he said, I think your foster parents' last name was Shirley. And he said, you just graduated from high school and you were going to work at Madison River Cattle Company. And I said, Tom, why would you remember that? This is 25 years later. You remember every single detail, and I only met you for about 2 minutes. How's that possible that you got all of those details right? And Tom said, Buck, I remember every second of my life. And I said, you got to be kidding me. No, he said, I remember every second of my life. So he said, that means everything I've ever done with horses my whole life, I remember all of it. He said, so that's why I've accumulated quite a bit of knowledge that I'm passing on to guys like you and Ray. So that was sort of the source of all this. And without a mind like Tom Dorrance had, well, I wouldn't be doing this for a living. I don't know what I'd be doing, but uh, it was just a gift, you know. And Tom Dorrance was a interesting guy. He was so kind. But you know how sometimes people who are real kind get taken advantage of? Not Tom Dorrance, because he was so far ahead of you. He knew what you were going to be thinking before you thought it. And yet he was never was never unkind to people. Um, it's just he's like nobody I ever met. And he passed all this on to Ray Hunt. And the bulk of my studies have been with Ray Hunt, of course.
So you said the memory, but I'm curious, like they started a movement, and if you are from a
Yeah.
little bit, I will not an expert, but a lot of the stuff that they are saying was relevant even for education. If you are change the word instead of a horse, you can put child. That's an education quote.
Yeah, it was pretty revolutionary, you know, this whole thing, I would say this way of working with horses probably goes back, 75, 80 years. And it really was pretty revolutionary in how people understood and worked with horses. It was completely different from the conventional wisdom. And I grew up around those old cowboys that would tie up a hind leg and tie their head around and, all the caveman stuff. But none of those guys were trying to do anything wrong. They were doing the best they could with what they knew. And then all of a sudden, here come this guy named Ray Hunt, and he brought it to the world. And Ray Hunt's methods of working with young horses pretty much span the globe now. Anybody that hasn't heard of the things that Ray Hunt did working with young horses has probably been living under a rock. And yet, toward the end of his life, he never really realized what an effect he had on the world. Never really was aware of what a huge ripple it caused across the entire world.
What allowed them to do the change, or what is lacking of, I will generalize, in the world to be able to fully comprehend or understand that level of depthness?
Well, I think if you were going to accept this kind of approach to working with horses, you have to be kind of dissatisfied with what you're doing and maybe not feel that good about yourself in the way that you work with horses, that you're open to do something different. And not everybody is. Not everybody is. Gosh, the world's full of people that maybe have a different approach to what they're doing, and they maybe don't have any interest at all in what I've spent my life doing. That's okay. That's their choice. But I don't mind looking in the mirror. I don't feel guilty about what I do. I don't have remorse when I put a horse away for the day. I'm just sorry the day's over and I can't wait till the next time I get on him. So I'm all about finding ways to get joy out of doing this, and I do. And then I try to pass what I've learned on to other people and in hopes of them enjoying the horse as much as I do. And when you enjoy the horse, when you're getting long and you're educating the horse, you're teaching him something. Um, the things you have to adjust within yourself to get handy at this just plain makes you a better person. That's all there is to it.
I was in Gallup certification, and she said something. Enough time with the horses, they will humble you. Said,
Oh,
how
yeah.
can you get humble? Spend enough time working with horses, they will humble you. But
Yeah. About the time you think you know everything, he'll let you in on the fact that maybe you haven't even scratched the surface. They will humble you. About the time you think you're a big deal, yeah, they'll let you know that you're not.
but you said something about, first of all, the working, you allowing the working with them to build you.
Yeah.
And do you think only if it's building your character or your vessel or your relationship with the spiritual side of it, then it will uh, be flow or be at art level? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. There's if you stay with this long enough and if it means enough to you, you transcend just being a good hand with horses and you approach what you do with horses as one of the fine arts. And so there's no end to that. It wouldn't be any different. I've often thought if I got a chance to speak to Michelangelo, the first thing I would ask him, I would say, Mike, is there anything about the Sistine Chapel kind of pisses you off a little bit that you've thought about it for a long, long time and you just really feel like you could do that a little bit better? I guarantee he would say, "Oh yeah, that northeast corner, it's pissed me off for 100 years. I know I could do it better now." Yet we look at it and look at it as being absolutely flawless, one of the most magnificent murals in the history of the world. But I guarantee you, he was still trying to get better the last day he was alive. And that's how I approach the horses. And so the things I offer people in the clinics, honestly, I'm already good enough to give them what they need in the clinics. But what I'm pursuing personally is for me and the horse. So I continue to get joy out of it. So I continue to be curious and feeling like I'm getting better. I'm not going to rest on my laurels ever. I'll keep getting better until I'm not here anymore.
what allowing you that? Like, because a lot of people, I don't know, achieve something with like they win or they and then it's gone.
Yeah, yeah.
What allowing you the difference or what? Because it's unique perspective.
It's not winning to me. I don't begrudge anybody for going to winning a buckle or a ribbon or a trophy. That's fine. It gives them something to do with their horse, and that's great that they do it. But and years ago, I showed a few horses, just trying to be a little more well-rounded in the horse business. And I've played polo, I've team roped, I've done a little bit of everything with horses, just so that I had a broad understanding of the horse world. But winning a horse show or not winning a horse show doesn't define me. And that's just how I am. But to some people, winning a horse show does indeed define them. And that's okay. They're just after something different than what I'm after, and no judgment from my side.
There is something that is defined you, or you are trying to be out of that definition.
I'd rather not be defined. Yeah. Yeah. Ray Hunt, a lot of times he would say things, and that I'd hear it and I'd think, damn, I wish I'd said that because that was really cool. And someone asked Ray one time, I thought it was a perfect answer. She said, Ray, where do you see yourself going with this horse thing. And he said, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm not lost. And and I've used that many times over the years. Credit to Ray for saying it first, but I figure that's where I am too. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm not lost.
How do you navigate? Like, because I get it, the fact that you are not feel lost because you have a connection or a connection with the horse. But is it inner voice that guide your way of working? Like, I'm curious about the aspect of intuitive work, and you credit the horses.
Well, that kind of alludes to the age-old question, are horsemen born or are they made? And Ray pondered that question quite a bit as well. And we didn't ever disagree on much, but we disagreed on that. Ray figured horsemen were born. It was in their DNA. That's what they were. And I didn't agree. I figured it was a combination of both. You may be born with some abilities that could be developed into something. You could be born as a horseman, but you won't become one unless you have an unusual work ethic to be able to cultivate it and turn it into something. So it isn't something that's just God-given that lands in your lap. God gives you lots of things, but if you don't do anything with it, it doesn't make a damn bit of difference. So I figured it was a little bit of both, but Ray always figured horsemen were born. They were born that way.
And did horses help you to develop your intuition? Do you feel you have a different
Oh yeah.
intuition in other
Oh, oh yeah,
side of life?
absolutely. But it's from making mistakes. That's how your intuition develops, your things that when you approach a horse, rather than take hours to figure out what you need to do, well, now what used to take me hours, seconds, and I know right what to do. Why? Because all the things I've done wrong over the last 50 odd years, all the mistakes that I've made, I remember them, and things that I've tried, and I was like, well, that didn't work out very damn good. I got the job done, but I know how I could have done that better. I could have got through that a lot easier. So that's a lot of it too, is your your intuition, your knowing what you need to do when you approach a horse. That only comes from experience. And that kind of experience only comes from exercising bad judgment a lot of times and remembering what the hell you did wrong.
Yeah. Do you believe they are sensitive to our energy in a
Oh yeah,
way?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, there was a lady at a clinic that I did in Ocala, Florida in January, and a fairly prominent dressage rider. And her horse was busy in the mouth the whole time, just neurotic, busy in the mouth. A nice lady, and at least she was receptive enough to be at my clinic,
Yeah.
and open for some new ideas. And we're all gathered there. And I said, has that horse been kind of busy in the mouth for a while? She said his whole life. I said, really? Have you ever seen his mouth quiet when you're riding him? Never. I said, how long do you think it'd take me to get his mouth quiet? She said, no disrespect, but you won't. I said, okay. So I stepped off my horse, and I can't really demonstrate how I touched him, but I knew exactly how to touch him. And his mouth was quiet in about 5 seconds. I mean, dead quiet. And his eyes got real soft. And I went back to my horse And I said, now, as long as I'm still present, his mouth will be quiet. But if I walk behind these other people and he can't see me anymore, he's going to be back to just being with you and his mouth's going to be busy again. So I kind of disappeared, busy in the mouth again. As soon as I walked back into view, he was content. And she said, you just blew my mind. She said, how did you do that? I said, experience. And it got to where if I was just in the area, she could ride him and the horse would be quiet in the mouth. But it's the feel the horse had for me and that what he knew I felt for him. And she never had that connection with the horse. Yet he'd do tricks, you know. He'd do his little dressage tricks, but it wasn't a good feeling for him. But I told her, I said, you have to get right with your horse and have him believe that you can support him. And he doesn't believe that you can support him. And I said, you're a nice lady. This isn't personal. But he believes I can support him. And she said, I want you to talk more about that. And I said, no, right now, I want you to go home and think more about that. And we'll talk another time.
I'm curious what they want us to feel around them, or what do you feel around them? Because it looks like it's a little bit state related.
A
That
little
you're
bit.
state related, that you are approaching that horse with the memories and the experience and the decision and where to touch, and yet some energy or some emotion or something that
It's called presence. It's called presence. And an example that a lot of people can understand, you could have two border collie dogs, exactly the same size, and you could send one into a pen of cattle, and the first one has no presence at all, and he'd get run underneath the fence by the cows. They'd chase him off. Then you could send the same size dog in there that has presence, and all the cows would be like, hey, you guys, pay attention. He might need us to go somewhere. Get ready to respond. Yet you'd look at the dogs and they'd look identical. One has presence and one doesn't. Animals can read that. Cows can read it. So if a cow can read it, a horse sure as hell can feel that presence. And that presence, now that may be something a person's born with, but it's also something that can be developed. And some of that is through, again, the experience being confident when you approach maybe a problem on a horse. These days, I don't approach when I'm going to help somebody with a horse. I don't approach them thinking, gosh, I hope the hell this works out because there's a lot of people watching. Never. I know what I need to do and I just go fix it and move on with my life. But I know before I get there, that's the confidence. Why? Because I've succeeded at the same problem about a million times. So there's no doubt in my mind that I'm going to get a change in the horse. And that, I think that contributes quite a lot to the presence that you'd have when you'd approach one.
so you're saying even the confident or that state is coming through those memories of succeeding or building of the belief that
Yeah.
I can do that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Wow, amazing. That was very deep, very profound. I think people can take a lot out of it, and I'm super, super, super thank you for allowing that to
Well, it's my pleasure. And now guess what I'm going to go do the rest of the afternoon?
ride horses.
I have to harrow a pasture. I have to be a farmer the rest of the day.
But I think it's both. It's the ability to do both. It's part of being real, deal with everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My life isn't quite so romantic here at the ranch. I actually have real work I have to do.
Yeah. Not like the movies, but you're still appearing on those.
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Amazing.
Well, it's been good talking to you.
Yeah. It was really good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh,
We
my
stay in
pleasure.
touch.
My pleasure. I'll see you again down the road
Same.
somewhere.
See you.
Okay.
Bye.
So long.
You accumulate some expertise or masteries with horses.
Yeah,
And then with time, you was able to transfer it to communicate with people.
right.
Do you have any advice for people that are in the same spot? Like they have the horses way of communicating with horses and
Well, I guess if it was someone that was wanting to kind of follow the path that I did, I would say these days things have become real easy for younger people, and I think they're kind of soft, to be honest with you. You have to be willing to pay your dues and ride thousands of horses and get a lot of experience before you start proclaiming yourself to be an authority on the topic. And there's a lot of younger people haven't ridden 100 horses, and yet they're in the same business trying to be that I am. Uh, that's a good way to fail because there are some tough horses out there that when you run across them, you can't just surrender and go, well, I don't want to work with that one. No, you have to say, well, bring them over here. I know what to do. Well, you got to have a lot of experience to feel that confident. And I don't know, these days it almost seems like they figure they can get all the knowledge they need out of Facebook, or off the internet and not have to be in the trenches and pay their dues like guys like me have. And it's going to be really, really hard to make it in the horse business unless you have a work ethic that is almost freakish. You have to be able to work harder than everybody else, even if you have some talent. And some people don't have that. Some do. The ones that have that work ethic, they'll be just fine.
so talent can bring you until a certain point, but hard work is gonna take you up from there.